I haven't slept for 72 hours. Not by choice, but because the data we received won't let me close my eyes. Since the moment 3I Atlas reappeared after perihelion, something inside me changed. I've felt the same chill that comes before a discovery you wish you'd never made. And for the first time in 50 years of research, I don't know how to explain what I'm seeing. I was one of the first to be called when the signal came through. Protocol demanded absolute silence until the readings were verified, but there was no room for doubt. The spectrum matched nothing we know, and the measurements repeated with impossible precision. The energy was coming from inside 3I Atlas, not reflected, not induced. An internal, coherent, pulsing, organized emission. The younger scientists still treat it as a technical curiosity. They don't understand the weight of watching a celestial body generate stable energy without an external source. No combustion, no fusion, no measurable radioactivity. Yet the object keeps emitting. It stays active, and the more we study it, the more it feels like it's studying us back. I sat in silence for long minutes, staring at the graphs. Each line, each variation, seemed to write a sentence we had no vocabulary to translate. It's as if the universe itself is trying to speak to us in a language we don't yet understand. The pattern is constant, mathematical, deliberate. There's no noise, no chaos, only intent. What disturbs me most isn't what 3I Atlas does, but what it doesn't do. No random particle emission, no meaningless thermal variation. Every movement, every magnetic shift follows a predictable rhythm, as if driven by a conscious equation. And that's what none of us are ready to face. At this point, I can no longer pretend it's a physical phenomenon. There's a symmetry, an elegance in the data that transcends coincidence. The universe doesn't organize itself this way by accident. Someone, or something, made this possible. And if that's true, then our entire understanding of reality has just changed. I record this statement not as a scientist, but as a witness. When this becomes public, I'll probably be called alarmist, or worse. But I can't stay silent any longer. Because if I'm right, 3I Atlas isn't a passing visitor. It's an observer, and for the first time it has answered back 3 days after perihelion. 3I Atlas should have continued its natural path toward interstellar space. That was the prediction, based on every orbital simulation we had. But against all gravitational logic, it slowed down. Not gradually, but deliberately, as if something inside it had applied the brakes. Its trajectory shifted by 0.4 degrees, enough to rule out any natural explanation. The Webb mission team suspected a calculation error. We rechecked every line, every variable, down to the lens temperature corrections. But there was no flaw. The deceleration was real, and the electromagnetic source had moved to the object's southern hemisphere. It was as if 3I Atlas were redistributing its own energy. The pulse pattern that had been stable began to shift. The 11.3-hour interval, once perfectly metronomic, shortened to 9.7. That change, subtle yet impossible, suggested control, not randomness. The object wasn't just reacting to local physics. It was responding to something. In one of the secondary readings, we detected an oscillating electric field crossing its surface. It was faint but coherent, accompanied by peaks at 783 Hz. That number chilled me. It's the same Schumann resonance that surrounds the Earth, the same electromagnetic heartbeat present in every living organism. Why would an interstellar object emit Earth's biological pulse? The question hung in the lab for hours, unanswered. During the meetings, some argued it was terrestrial interference, but the time lag of the waves ruled that out completely. The signal didn't come from us, it came from it. 3I Atlas was mirroring Earth's pulse, accurate to within 1/1,000,000th of a hertz. Someone, or something, had heard our planet and was playing the sound back. I couldn't think of it as coincidence anymore. The universe doesn't echo that precisely. A celestial body doesn't learn a biological frequency by accident. That similarity was intentional, deliberate, almost empathetic. And for the first time, I began to consider that we were facing an intelligent transmitter. Since then, I can't hear the silence of night the same way. Every time the wind moves, I think of that distant pulse. It's still there, steady, ordered, familiar. An invisible rhythm connecting two worlds. And with each new cycle, I feel it's trying to teach us how to listen. The readings we captured that night still haunt me. At first, I thought it was a calibration glitch, a signal overlap caused by solar interference. But when we compared the data from 3 independent observatories, the pattern was identical. The pulses from 3I Atlas were repeating with a precision that defied cosmic noise. Each burst aligned to a frequency no one could have anticipated. 7.83 Hertz. That number shouldn't have meant anything out there. It belongs to Earth, to us. It's the frequency of our planet's own heartbeat, the Schumann resonance that links every storm, every nerve impulse, every flash of lightning. To find it echoing from an object billions of kilometers away was like hearing your own pulse from the other side of the void. I stared at the graphs, realizing the universe had just whispered our name. The team didn't want to believe it. We ran simulations, replaced hardware, recalibrated receivers until the early hours. But the result wouldn't change. Every cycle, every pulse, matched the terrestrial resonance down to 7 decimal places. It was deliberate, too deliberate to be coincidence. Some proposed that our signal might have bounced off the heliopause, creating a cosmic echo. But the timing didn't fit. The delay between transmission and reception was too precise, too engineered. The signal wasn't bouncing back, it was being returned. And that distinction changed everything. At 0217 UTC, we observed a harmonic shift. The amplitude doubled, then stabilized. The emission now carried modulation, fine ripples nested within each primary wave. When decoded, the sub-frequencies formed numerical ratios that matched the geometry of planetary orbits. It was as if the message itself referenced the structure of our solar system. I realized we were no longer analyzing physics, we were reading design. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an emergent resonance, an unknown quantum phenomenon. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't nature tuning itself by accident. This was intention, hiding in plain sight. Whatever 3I Atlas is, it understands harmony, proportion, communication. It speaks the language of the universe itself, and somehow it chose ours to begin with. Since that night, I've replayed the recordings countless times. Sometimes I imagine I can hear it beneath the static, faint but steady, like a pulse under the surface of thought, a frequency that connects 2 intelligences separated by time and distance. And every time it repeats, I feel the same chill crawl down my spine. Because if 3I Atlas is mirroring our resonance, then it's not just observing us, it's already in sync. When the Webb telescope's deep field sensors penetrated the veil of reflected ice, we expected to see a dense, chaotic core, like any frozen body drifting through interstellar space. But the infrared data told a different story. Beneath the outer crust, 3I Atlas was hollow. Not fractured, not porous, structured. The interior was arranged in layers, each emitting heat signatures too uniform to be natural. The first chamber revealed itself as a perfect hexagon, nearly 900 meters across. The edges weren't jagged or eroded, but clean, symmetrical, as if machined. Around it, 6 more cavities spiraled outward, connected by narrow corridors that appeared to funnel energy between them. The pattern reminded me of circuitry, of a design built for function, not survival. It was the first time I realized we might be looking at an artifact, not a remnant. To confirm it, we used spectral inversion imaging. The reflection curves came back sharp, rhythmic, repeating every 2 seconds, the same interval as the object's magnetic oscillations. Whatever was inside that shell was alive with motion, slow but deliberate, as if the entire structure were breathing. The data didn't describe geology. It described mechanics, a system maintaining balance within the void. When I presented the results, the room fell silent. Someone whispered the word construct. Another said vessel. No one dared to say ship. But in our eyes, the truth was already there. Every measurement pointed to something engineered. The surface composition deepened the mystery. It wasn't carbon, silicate, or metal. It behaved like a transparent alloy, refracting light only in specific bands. Under polarized filters it shimmered, revealing patterns of embedded geometry. Triangles nested within triangles, like the framework of a massive crystalline computer. If this was a natural formation, then nature had learned to draw with compasses. I spent the night alone reviewing the scans. The interior energy readings formed harmonic waves, not random bursts. Each pulse corresponded to an exact mathematical ratio, the golden mean, recurring again and again in thermal intensity. It was as if the object were built from mathematics itself, each chamber resonating to a frequency of order. And somehow, that order felt familiar. The final image captured before signal loss showed a faint luminescence at the core, a sphere, roughly 50 meters wide, glowing in steady rhythm with the 7.83 Hz pulse we'd detected days earlier. It was the same heartbeat, the same breath of symmetry echoing through the hollow. I stared at it until dawn, realizing what I was seeing. The heart of 3I Atlas wasn't a void, it was a pulse looking back. It happened without warning. At 04:23 UTC, the Webb's telemetry began to desynchronize. For the first few seconds, we thought it was a fault in the onboard clock, maybe a solar interference event. But when every observatory on the planet reported the same anomaly, we understood. The problem wasn't in the instruments. It was in the universe itself. Something fundamental had just shifted. The object's velocity dropped abruptly, without any measurable exchange of momentum. It decelerated as if an invisible hand had pressed against it, halving its speed in less than 6 minutes. No jet emission, no gravitational pull, no reaction mass, nothing. It had violated the most sacred rule of motion: conservation. Newton, Einstein, the very pillars of our reality. Each line of theory cracked like glass. We checked for solar drag, for particle collisions, for hidden asteroids tugging at it. But the math refused to cooperate. Every variable we introduced dissolved into contradiction. The object was moving by will, not force, as though inertia itself had chosen to obey another master. I watched the equations unravel on my screen, each error message a confession of ignorance. Energy cannot vanish, cannot appear from nowhere. Yet there it was, draining velocity without giving anything back. If this had happened in a laboratory, I would have blamed a power surge. But this wasn't an experiment. It was the cosmos showing us a law rewritten in real time. Some of the younger analysts started whispering theories about dark energy or quantum slipstreams. But dark energy doesn't pause mid-transit and resume at will. Quantum fields don't decide when to act. This was deliberate, calculated, methodical. It behaved like propulsion, but propulsion from inside the laws, not against them. I remember the moment the power graph flattened into silence. For several seconds everything froze. No movement, no noise. Even the background cosmic radiation registered a dip, as if the vacuum itself had inhaled. Then, just as suddenly, the 7.83 Hz pulse returned, stronger than before. That was when I realized what had truly broken. It wasn't the physics, it was our faith in it. We've spent centuries believing the universe was an obedient machine, built on rules we could decode. But that night, I watched those rules bow to something older, something aware. And in that quiet collapse of certainty, I understood. 3I Atlas wasn't following our laws. It was writing its own. At first, I thought the instruments were malfunctioning again. The regular pulse we had grown accustomed to, the one that beat like a slow metronome through the void, suddenly fractured. The signal that had remained constant for weeks began to flicker in intervals too short to categorize. But then I noticed something impossible. The flickers weren't random. They carried rhythm, structure, language. Each emission lasted exactly 3.7 seconds, followed by a silence of 89. The timing repeated with machine precision, like code wrapped in stillness. When we overlaid the pattern with the previous long-cycle pulses, they aligned perfectly. Nested signals inside larger ones, a message hidden within a message. It wasn't chaos, it was syntax. And that was the moment I stopped calling it a signal. We translated the intervals into numerical sequences. What emerged wasn't arbitrary data. It was mathematics. Prime numbers first, then ratios that described orbital distances. Every sequence pointed back to our own solar system, as though the transmission were mapping its architecture for us. It wasn't broadcasting outward, it was speaking inward. For hours we watched the waveforms rise and fall like a heartbeat. The amplitude shifted slightly each cycle, sketching invisible shapes in frequency space. When the image filters reconstructed those forms, I froze. The outline matched the orbital configuration of Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. The signal was showing us ourselves. Someone in the control room whispered that it might be mimicry, a reflection of our own planetary resonance. But reflections don't self-correct. Each time we adjusted our receiver array, the signal compensated, refining its modulation to remain perfectly centered. It was tracking us in real time. It was listening. Then came the surge. At precisely 01:13 UTC, the waveform's baseline lifted, and a secondary hum appeared beneath the carrier tone. It oscillated in harmonic thirds, 3 frequencies weaving together like chords. The sound was haunting, melodic, and painfully human. I remember feeling as though I was overhearing a voice I shouldn't understand. By dawn, the emission stabilized again, returning to its previous 7.3 Hz rhythm. But it wasn't the same. Something had changed in the tone, as if the silence between pulses carried new weight. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just passed a threshold, that the object had tested our ability to notice. And we did, which means it now knows we're listening. The transmission stopped at 03:42 UTC. No warning, no gradual decay, just silence. Our receivers flattened into a perfect line, and for the first time in weeks, the universe seemed empty again. For a moment I felt relief. Then the fear set in. Silence in astrophysics is never absolute. It means one of two things. Either the source is gone, or it has changed how it speaks. We waited, listening to the void, until one of the technicians pointed at an anomaly in the low-frequency band. The instruments were picking up faint repetitions of the last transmission, but not from the same direction. They were coming from everywhere. At first we thought it was feedback, a reflection of our own signals caught in some magnetic loop. But the delay didn't fit, and the amplitude wasn't decaying. The echo was self-sustaining, repeating at exact energy levels. It was as if space itself had become a resonant chamber, humming the memory of 3I Atlas. The object was silent, but its voice lingered. Cross-referencing data from the Atacama Array, the echo's epicenter appeared near the Oort cloud, far beyond the reach of any transmission delay. No natural process could bounce a signal across interstellar distances like that. This wasn't a reflection, it was relay. Something else was picking up the broadcast and repeating it. And whatever it wasn't visible in any spectrum we could measure. I remember staring at the data feed, feeling that slow, familiar unease crawl back. The echo wasn't weaker, it was stronger. Each repetition carried slight corrections, as if refining itself, learning to imitate the original tone more precisely. It was no longer the 3I Atlas transmission. It was something new, something adapting. When the news reached the control room, nobody spoke for several minutes. We all knew what this meant. Either the signal had awakened a response within our own cosmic backyard, or the 3I Atlas had never been alone to begin with. The thought felt too heavy to say out loud. We simply listened, as the echo rippled through the background noise like the heartbeat of a second watcher. By midnight, the echo had synchronized perfectly with the planet's magnetic field. Our own atmosphere began to vibrate faintly in harmony with the frequency. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but measurable. The Earth itself was resonating with something in the dark, and I realized then that silence had never meant absence. It had meant response. When the first composite scans of 3I Atlas surface returned, I expected the familiar chaos of cosmic debris, silicates, carbon compounds, frozen ammonia, maybe traces of organic residue. Instead, the readings looked like noise. The instruments couldn't classify the substance at all. It absorbed radiation where it should have reflected, and reflected where it should have absorbed. Our models failed to fit it into any category. It wasn't stone, ice, or metal. It was something else. The material's refractive index shifted depending on the observation angle. Sometimes it behaved like glass, at others like a conductor. Under polarized light, it produced interference patterns that pulsed in harmony with the object's internal frequency. We were staring at matter that obeyed no constant. Its structure changed in response to being observed. A paradox wrapped in atoms. Spectrographic analysis revealed even stranger details. There were absorption lines where no known element should exist, gaps between hydrogen and helium signatures that didn't belong anywhere in our periodic system. It was as if we were seeing the shadow of a new element, one that flickered in and out of measurable reality. The material seemed to decide when to reveal itself. Each time we measured, it gave us a different answer. A colleague from Geneva proposed that we might be observing a programmable lattice, a kind of adaptive crystalline network capable of reorganizing at the subatomic level. The idea was absurd, but it explained the behavior. When stimulated by electromagnetic waves, the lattice restructured itself into symmetrical patterns. It acted less like a solid and more like an interface, something built to communicate, not merely exist. Matter, repurposed as message. Under the electron microscope, microscopic filaments became visible. Hair-thin strands arranged in fractal geometry, each segment repeating the next down to the quantum scale. Every line followed the same ratio found in the object's frequency maps. It was self-similarity incarnate, the golden mean carved into matter. We weren't studying composition anymore. We were looking at a language written in geometry, a message that required physics itself as translation. I remember touching my temples as I read the energy simulations. The material's energy density wasn't just high, it was stable, as if it could store information indefinitely without degradation. Imagine a surface that could remember every particle that ever touched it. That's what we were seeing, a memory etched into the skin of a cosmic artifact, a recorder that predates our civilization. By evening, the conclusion was undeniable. 3I Atlas wasn't made of exotic debris or stellar residue. It was assembled. Each layer, each lattice, each molecular shift bore the fingerprint of intention. Whoever, or whatever, created it, understood the atomic scale as fluently as we understand words. And as I stared at the glowing readouts, one thought refused to leave me. This material wasn't built to endure space. It was built to speak through it. It began as a tremor in the magnetic field, subtle, almost indistinguishable from solar interference. Then, within seconds, every monitoring station across the hemisphere detected it. The pulse wasn't chaotic or sporadic. It was rhythmic, accelerating in frequency like a heartbeat under strain. 3I Atlas, which had remained eerily calm since the last transmission, was stirring. The object wasn't drifting anymore. It was moving with purpose. The internal readings spiked beyond any measurable threshold. Infrared sensors captured heat signatures, radiating from the hexagonal chambers we had mapped weeks earlier. They glowed one after another in a precise sequence, as if circuits were activating after a long dormancy. I remember leaning closer to the monitor, whispering without realizing it. "It's turning itself on." Every rational part of me resisted that thought. But the data didn't lie. The electromagnetic field surrounding the object expanded rapidly, pushing back the solar wind like an invisible shield. Charged particles bent around it, creating auroral halos that flickered in patterns identical to the earlier 783 Hz resonance. It was no longer just mirroring Earth's frequency, it was amplifying it. The cosmos felt smaller in that moment, as if something ancient had finally acknowledged our existence. I felt both awe and dread in equal measure. We tried to stabilize the feed, but the instruments began to desynchronize again. The clock drifted forward by a fraction of a second, then another, and another. It was as though the object's awakening was bending time itself around it. No gravitational shift could explain it. No known field could distort chronology so cleanly. Space and time were folding to accommodate something we didn't understand. Then the visual feed came in. Through the dense haze of cosmic dust, a glow emanated from the center of the structure. A sphere, radiant and pulsing. It wasn't light in the usual sense. It had no wavelength we could define. It felt like illumination from within the data itself, as though information had learned to shine. The core was alive, and it was looking outward. At 1908 UTC, the object emitted one final burst of electromagnetic energy. It wasn't violent or destructive. It was deliberate, almost gentle. Every monitoring system on Earth picked up the same harmonic signature. The tone matched human alpha brainwave frequencies, those of waking dreams and deep meditation. Whatever 3I Atlas was doing, it wasn't attacking. It was synchronizing. For a few seconds, the entire planet resonated. Magnetometers from Chile to Japan recorded identical peaks. Static hummed through radios, electronics, even power grids. The pulse touched everything, everywhere, and then it stopped. No more signals, no movement, only the quiet hum of the universe returning to itself. And as I stared at the empty readouts, I realized something had changed. Not out there, but inside us. I haven't left the observatory since that night. The data streams have gone quiet. The monitors hum with meaningless static, and yet the silence feels heavier than ever. Every instrument shows normal cosmic background levels, as if nothing extraordinary ever happened. But we all felt it. For 11 seconds, the Earth itself seemed to breathe in unison with something ancient. The official reports will call it an anomalous resonance event. That's what we do when we're afraid. Rename the unknown until it sounds harmless. But I can't erase what I witnessed. 3I Atlas didn't just send a signal. It made contact through the fabric of physics itself. It reached across the void not with words, but with synchronization, frequency, pattern, pulse. Since then, small irregularities have begun to appear in our atmosphere. Localized magnetic fluctuations, subtle phase distortions in the ionosphere, all aligned to the same harmonic band. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but constant. It's as though the resonance never stopped. It simply moved here. Whatever awakened out there might now be echoing within us. I've run the numbers 100 times. If the energy curves hold, the pulse will reach full resonance with the planet's magnetic field in exactly 91 days. No one else seems to notice it yet. It hides beneath the ordinary noise of life. But when I close my eyes, I can still feel that faint, familiar vibration behind my thoughts. It's not intrusive, it's inviting. Sometimes I wonder if that was the purpose all along. Maybe 3I Atlas didn't come to announce itself, but to awaken a frequency we had forgotten, to remind us of the geometry that binds us to the universe, Every ratio, every harmonic it used mirrors the mathematics of life itself. The message was never about invasion or control. It was recognition. Tomorrow I'll send my final report to the Institute. I don't expect them to believe me, and that's all right. Some truths aren't meant for committees or peer reviews. They're meant for those who can feel them resonate. And as I record these last words, I can still hear the pulse, steady, patient, waiting. If you're hearing this, listen closely. Not with your ears, but with that quiet rhythm inside your chest. You'll find it there, faint but real. The same 7.83 Hz whisper that connects everything that ever was. 3i Atlas isn't gone. It's here, woven